Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Buldakova. I'm CEO and the co founder at Meander. We are building a mentorship platform helping people to grow in their careers. And we have mentors across the world from Google, Meta, LinkedIn, Amazon, and many other amazing companies. And in those interview series, I talked to some amazing thinkers, thought leaders who are thinking about the future of work and who are thinking about nonlinear careers. And I'm super lucky to be joined by Ant Murphy. Ant, hello.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really great to have you. So let's start with a quick introduction. Maybe you could share a quick intro about yourself, just a couple of minutes to give an insight of your career journey so far.
Yeah, definitely. So 100% non-linear career path. I think I've met a lot of people like that. So I wonder if it's the norm as opposed to the exception these days. But I started my career as an engineer. Actually, did 2 years as software engineer. Did a complete different career change. Joined the military here in Australia. Didn't
Oh,
pursue
wow.
that full time. I went to the reserves and came back to corporate life and tried to work out what's next and what am I supposed to do. Like I didn't want to be an engineer anymore. I was an engineer because I wanted to experience that. I always had I always wanted to get into like leadership or management or entrepreneurship actually as well. But I wanted to experience what it's like to be like on the ground. I came back, got a role as a BA, got part of an agile transformation, moved into product ownership, got really interested in agile, spent some time in that space. But really, I kind of stumbled upon product and working with product teams is really where I enjoyed it and loved doing the work. And so that's where I kind of took my career deliberately, kind of pushed it that direction. And then now I'm a product coach and consultant, and I run my own coaching business and I run a business called Product Pathways as well. But that's kind of where I've taken it next as the next chapter. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how many pivots were there in your career path?
How many?
Yeah, let's count.
There'll be several. Like so, I was an engineer. I was a BA. I've been a product owner. I've been a Scrum Master. I've been an Agile coach. I've been a product manager. I've been a what I'm doing now. I guess product coach. I guess owning a business. I mean, I've done a few different businesses. I think four businesses all up. Two of them have kind of didn't continue, and I'm still running two at the moment. So yeah.
Amazing. So, which one of those transitions did you find most difficult?
I think coming back out of the army and then which I didn't count actually in there, but and then going into business analyst was probably the hardest. It was hard for me for a few reasons. Like it was hard because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I was still very early in my career. I just knew I didn't want to do engineering. I had reasons to transition to part time military as well, and yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and also I didn't have any skills. So like I didn't have anything to back it up, right? So you could look at all these other skills, but if you looked at my experience, what have I done? I worked actually, so previous to, you could add these on top too. Like I packed shelves at a supermarket as well during high school. So a few other jobs on top of that. But yeah, like I had those skills and then I had been an engineer but that's not what I wanted to do. I think I could have gotten a job as an engineer pretty easily, but I didn't want to do that. And I think making that really big shift, and also I don't think there's a lot of like later on moving from like business analyst into like product owner, there's overlap between the roles. So I found those transitions a lot easier, but like engineer to BA was very different. And it was very hard to sell myself as someone who could, you know, I guess do that role. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell us how did you do that? Because I think many people transitioning into a new career actually struggle to repackage their past experience to fit the new role.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's that, right? Like, so a lot of it for me is going back through the things that I've done previously and finding areas where I did things that were similar to what I need to do. So, like communication, I spent a lot of time learning communication at the Royal Military College and doing that as a job. On top of that, when I packed shelves at a supermarket, I actually ended up being the 2IC of the department. So I ended up being second in charge and I used to supervise and run things. So I tried to leverage that experience of trying to run a team and communicating and having to work with people and those types of things. And then as well as like time in the army, there's communication there as well. And then try and find times in my while I was an engineer that I did similar things to a BA. So like we were a very lean team and We had one BA and one project manager that I had exposure to while I was an engineer, but I used to talk to the, I guess, business people a lot and very frequently. So trying to package those experiences up, like, hey, I'm no stranger to talk to somebody and try to understand, you know, what do they require, what do they need, and then try and, although I didn't do a huge amount of documentation about it, I just kind of put it into code, which, you know, maybe I shouldn't have, but I tried just at least package that up in a way that, yeah, it sounds like I've had, which I have. I mean, that's the truth. I think the reality is there's roles and then there's skills. And if you really look at your career, you've got heaps of skills. You've had heaps of exposure to all these different skills, and you just need to find how do those skills map, and then how do I talk about that experience and highlight that experience. So then I have some skill overlap, and then I'm not completely, yeah, like I don't know anything. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, I think this concept of transferable skills is really important when you're changing careers. Like as we are talking about skills, which ones you think you carried across all your career transitions? Like which ones you found to be the most transferable across all those pivots?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I've reflected on this a lot actually, and uh, a lot of it comes to communication and leadership for me. And I know they're very high level kind of macro things, probably more leadership than communication, but those things in particular. And then probably the side thing to that would be relationship building. So if I think about even all the way back when I was at a supermarket, and I used to work in the produce department, but would have people, obviously customer complaints. And if I was the one on duty, I'd have to deal with that. But I also had to we used to do like a stand up. Funny that I was doing stand ups back then. And I had to talk with the department, like the supermarket manager as well, and everything, and having to just deal with people at different levels of leadership and being able to have rapport and a relationship with them, be able to communicate with them effectively, and then also then lead a team. I think that's always something that's come across. Like I've been fortunate, even all the way back then in that experience, to have some amazing role models around leadership. Like I've from day one from back then, I've been surrounded by very empowering leaders who give you like the intent and then give you the space to go execute on that and work it out in the autonomy. And there was always a high bar to, you know, you're on your own, you need to work it out, and we're here to support, but yeah, it's kind of up to you. So I always had that as a role model. Funny that I end up going from that and the military into more corporate life, where then I have this really like command and control, and people want to micromanage you, and yeah, and it just never sat with how I viewed things. And then later in my career, especially when I'm coaching or when I was a product manager as well, and you know, I've led teams as well, been a product leader, and in those situations, it's always served me well, right? Like I've always been empowering, focus on relationships, focus on building trust and rapport, and building strong relationships, and yeah, creating space. So those skills have just always gone through, and I think they're transferable to everything. If you can build great relationships and you can communicate effectively, and people like you, which is probably the last thing about the leadership and the autonomy, you're going to go far. I think you're always going to find it not super difficult in spaces. Yeah, in any
Mm-hmm.
role. Mm.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally resonates with me and with my career changes as well. I wonder how you can demonstrate those skills, because I feel like a lot of what you mentioned are really um, not so tangible in terms of results. Like, how do you demonstrate your communication skills or leadership skills during the interview? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, leadership skills are a lot harder. I think leadership skills, especially if they're going to test for it, they'll ask some questions around about scenarios and times you've led teams and difficult situations and how you dealt with that. So I think being able to have examples to back that up is always useful. And yeah, even in my first job, you know, working in a produce department packing shelves, I dealt with some difficult employees, you know, people, yeah, and all that. So I had some of those scenarios. But communication is something that I think you can always do. I think, you know, some of the tips I've done, some of them accidental and kind of learned it over time, that you can probably steal. Uh, You know, when you're in an interview, the way that you communicate, they're going to be testing that the whole time, right? And if you think about like even there's something that you're pretty much always going to do in an interview, which is introducing yourself, right? Like what's your career journey? You can practice that and you can create. I didn't do it for this one, but I've got a pretty like a slightly longer version that I pretty much almost say verbatim every time. And you can practice that. And then when you say it, you come across really clear, you come across as really coherent. And like you know what you're talking about. You don't have a lot of ums and ahs, which I just picked myself saying a little one of them just then. And yeah, you become clear, and then that communication is clear. And then obviously the next part is actually then answering the questions and maintaining that throughout, which you can also use frameworks. There's like those frameworks around it. What was one of them? There was one that, and it just loses my mind. But it's one where you talk about like the situation, and then what was the ask, and then star. That's it. Star. That's it. Yeah, star. So you can use star. So star's awesome. But any framework like that, if you can just follow this linear thing, you then package that up in your head, and then when you talk, you follow something coherent and logical, and you come across as very clear. And then the last thing that I've done very accidentally is you can actually sit here and record yourself. So I do this when I coach product managers a lot, and especially when they want help with communication. Is you can sit there, record yourself, then watch it, and then give yourself feedback. Did you and ah? Did you waffle? Did you? Yeah. And then you can then try and improve, and you can just record yourself. Like everyone has a camera and a phone, or and you get a microphone. You can record yourself and give yourself feedback. And if you do that over and over again, you'll also improve.
Now, that's amazing advice. And I think not just for people interviewing for a job, but also for aspiring coaches and product mentors who want to try that. Awesome. So let's talk actually about product management, because a lot of our listeners are aspiring product managers. So tell me more about this transition. How did you find out that you want to be a product manager?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate in my career. I've spent most of it, the vast majority of it, with digital product teams, really. So I do have a bias towards that than like physical products or anything like that. But I've been fortunate that I spent time in those teams, from being a BA, even when I was a Scrum Master coaching teams as an agile coach, and then also being a product owner and a product manager. I spent time in those teams. And I had this moment, like there's this really kind of inflection point that is very vivid in my mind, that I just always remember when I was an agile coach. So I got really interested in the agile side, and I kind of pursued that. And most of my career has been getting interested in something and then just like chasing it and being very relentless about that, and then pivoting, right? And I was chasing that, and I had this very vivid memory of being an agile coach, and I got moved out of working with the digital product teams, and I was working with this kind of people and culture team, and it was all right. Like, don't get me wrong, but I was helping them with like Kanban and understand cycle time and flow and all that type of stuff. And I just remember thinking, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I enjoy. And so I sat down. I was like, I remember having that moment at work, and I just came home, and maybe I did it on the train, but I remember reflecting and thinking about, well, if I don't feel fulfilled right now doing this, then what was it about what I was doing before that was helping me feel fulfilled? And I remember some vivid moments in as well on top of that I was reflecting on. There's a moment when I was catching a train to work, obviously pre-COVID, when we're all going in 9 to 5 and 5 days a week. And I saw somebody on the train open with their phone, and they had the app open that I was product managing at that time. And I just remember that and feeling like a huge sense of purpose. And I was like, that's why I do what I do. I love that. Like, I'm going to work to make that better and to help them. Right. And I remember thinking about that moment. I remember thinking about things like working in the team and problem solving, being close to customers and all that type of stuff. And I started realizing, well, what I really enjoyed was I felt like I was getting too far away from the product side. Like, there was no product strategy stuff. There was no discovery. And whilst I enjoy all the agile stuff, because that's a huge part of how we deliver products, it wasn't the whole picture. I felt like I was drifting away from discovery and strategy in particular. So I pushed my career back that way, is really what I did. But I had that moment, and I just reflected. I just didn't feel like I was super pumped to come into work the next day, you know?
Yeah, I totally feel that it's really important to be energized by what you do. And it's so important to catch this moment when you don't feel this anymore, because that's ultimately what leads to burnouts and to, quiet quitting, if you will.
Yes.
Awesome. So, in terms of your transition, so before that transition, you were in agile coaching, is it right?
Yes, yeah. So I did a few, like I bounced back and forth between being like a product owner and then a scrum master, and then I was a product manager, and then I basically brought a product to market for that company, and then I was interested in the agile coaching side of the fence. So I did a really good job on that, apparently. Well, yeah, I did, and I was talking to the people, the coaches and the agile coaches, and I was basically saying that this is where I wanted to take my career. So they they then took me in, and a lot of what I was doing was trying to help the other teams do what I was doing on that greenfield product, that 0 to 1 product. But then I moved outside of that because you stay there for a couple of months or however long, and then yeah, you start to get moved around, and then that's when I got moved away. It was probably the first role for like a long time, years, that I moved away from digital product teams, and I just didn't feel that fulfilled when that happened. Yeah.
Makes sense. So you actually had the chance to try product management before you transitioned to it full time. What would you recommend to people who haven't had this chance yet? So would you also recommend to, at least try it for a couple of months and see if it fits, or are there any other methods people could consider to understand whether product management is for them?
Yeah, I think there's like you can obviously trying's one of the best things. And yes, it can make your career really choppy. My career's super choppy. I don't try and hide it or anything either. And obviously that can have, people get worried about the downsides of that or saying that you're career hopping and that type of stuff. I'm sure I've run into that perception in my career, but equally most of the time I can explain a very solid rationale as to why that occurred and what happened, and generally most people are okay with that. But you can also talk to people. I think talking to people and getting exposure to it is a huge part of it. I was doing that with the agile coaching. I was talking to heaps of agile coaches, and I was trying to understand what the role's like and whether I would enjoy it. I spent some time working with one, so being able to shadow and spend some time observing what they do. So like those things are going to be super helpful. So you can apply that to product management, right? Like find some people that you can talk to. You can ask them about the role. You can get clarity on it. You can learn about it too. Like I'm a real avid learner and reader. I read a lot, learn a lot, and when I get my eyes set on something that I find interesting, I'll really kind of like a dog with a bone, go a little bit relentless on it. And so, and I've done that throughout my career. I get interested in these things, and so agile was the same. And I just kind of dive head in, and I just take courses, watch videos, read blogs, learn as much as I can, talk to people, and ask them questions. So you can learn a lot from that and get exposure. But I don't think you really know until you give it a go. But you might pick up some things in that conversation that makes you think, you know what, that's not for me. So you can filter things out, but I think at the end of the day, if you pass that, because that's what happened to me, I kind of passed that, and then I gave the role a go, and then I still was enjoying it because I was still working with the digital product teams and product managers and stuff day to day, and product designers and engineers. So I was really enjoying that. But then once I got moved away, I realized, oh, actually, that's not not where I wanted to be. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what was your plan to transition into product management? So, did you create some learning plan to, fill the gaps with some skills, or did you just dive straight in and started to look for a job? What was your process like?
Yeah, my process was nowhere near as structured as I probably would do it today if I had to do it again. That's for sure. But I dove straight head first in. Really, like my first point is I just start googling things is really where I start, and then I start talking to people, and then I start to build a picture of my own and find some books, find some courses, and I did all those things. And through that learning, I was uncovering deficits. So something that I knew was a huge deficit that I uncovered was design thinking and product discovery. So I actually went and did a UX course is what I ended up doing at that point in time, just because I knew I wasn't that strong in it. And we're going back several years, so there wasn't a lot of product discovery courses, and I don't even think I had been super exposed to the term product discovery at that stage. I just knew that like there's this whole piece of the puzzle at the front that's like design thinking and understanding your customers and interviewing customers and synthesizing data and that type of stuff to get to what we should build. And then I was pretty good at the delivery side of the fence because of my time there. So I knew that was a deficit. So I went and did a course, and obviously the more you learn about something, the more you'll start to uncover deficits. So that's the things that I start to look for is like, okay, as I paint a picture of what this role looks like, what do I know I'm strong in? And I can tick those things off. And those things are good to highlight anyways, because then when you get to interviewing and talking, and even just your CV, how do I highlight these things to make it seem like, yes, I've had exposure to this. And then the deficits, how do you work on those things? So the course was one of them. I spent a lot of time talking and spent a lot of time with designers. Actually, I had like a maybe 2-3 years of my career where I kind of started spending more time with designers than probably anyone else, and picking their brains and pairing with them. And if they'll run an ideation workshop or something like that, I'll be like, "Can I come along?" And yeah. And then the next thing that I probably did that I think is a really good tip is no one will like no one's in your head is what I wanted to say. So if you're thinking about moving your career, you've got to let everyone else know that's what you wanted to do. And that's something that I did, was I made it very known. Like that's where I want to take my career. Same with the agile coaching. Like I made it very known. And that's how the conversation started about me moving into the coaching team and getting an opportunity in that role was just making it known. I've done that repetitively throughout my career. You've got to tell people and tell them and find the person. If I think about the agile one, I felt the head of agility and I spoke to her and I spent time with her and I was like, this is where I want to take my career. This is what I want to do, this type of stuff. Yeah, you've got to make it known because when an opportunity comes up, if they don't know that's where you want to take it, your career, and they don't know that you have some transferable skills or that you are growing yourself and learning and you have knowledge and competency in that space, they're just not going to think about you as they're going to pick somebody else for the role or go to market. But if they know that you're interested in it and you've managed to show that, like, hey, I'm doing these courses, I'm learning, I'm not completely clueless to what I need to do, then you become an option. But you can only be an option when it makes it known. And you lose nothing because, like, worst case, they don't pick you, but you just stay where you are today, which is you're no better or worse than what you were before. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that makes sense. And I feel like it's kind of helping you to gather around some supporters and cheerleaders, like people who could already share some expertise with you, who've been through that path, and just, share some tips that might be super helpful.
Yeah, and on the point of cheerleaders, like the mentorship goes in a way two ways. Maybe that's not the best way to describe it, but what I mean by that is I through spending time with people and picking their brains and working with them, I built rapport and trust and credibility with them. And some of those people were one of them in particular who really mentored me. He was one of my champions to say we should give Ant a go and actually give him a try in this role because I think he'll do really, really well. So not only did I learn a ton by trying to pick his brain, he also became a huge advocate of mine, and yeah, was a defining or a huge part of me getting that role. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a great tip for everyone who wants to build relationships with people, because probably one of the best ways to do that is to start asking great questions. Nice. So, what helped you to get your first job in product management? So, did you package your resume in some way? Was it an opportunity from your network? What were the most useful things that you did, and the things that helped you to get the job?
Yeah, so my first role was from the network. So yeah, network is super valuable. I've I wasn't super deliberate about building a network early in my career, although I accidentally did. Probably because I like to talk to people and try and pick their brains and understand it. So I kind of built this network. And then I really realized that role was actually the one that made me realize just how powerful it was, because it ended up coming to me about this role. And the person who came was like, I know you don't have experience in it, but I know this is where you want to take your career. Because again, I made it known. And they were basically kind of advocating for me on their company side to actually get me into the role. So that kind of got me the foot in the door, and then I managed to, I guess, do well in the interview and do well with getting through those phases to actually end up getting the role. But I don't think I would have been considered for it if I didn't have that network and that in there. But obviously, I think some of the things that if I think about in hindsight, and even just later in my career, trying to repackage myself and all that type of stuff. The more you learn about a space, the more you're going to learn about what they look for, and you can repackage it. So if you think about like a product role, you want your resume to sound product centric, even if you haven't had the role. So you want to mention things like, if you don't mention, you don't want to put in buzzword bingo, but like a perfect example would be they're looking for impact. Impact is one of the number one things that people are looking for, because our role as product managers is all about impact, right? Like, what are we actually driving? So if you can put metrics in there and show impact that you've done and how you've actually, moved the dial inside the organization, your resume is going to be way stronger, just like that. But I learned that by going through the process and actually understand that. But you can repackage it even if you don't have a huge amount of experience. And then obviously you can talk about spending time with customers. You can talk about spending time with the dev team and prioritization strategy, whatever you need to put in there. But impact in particular is really good. But then you can highlight it. And it doesn't sound, if you're talking about things like delivering scope on time, and maybe I'll talk about what not to do, and like, we did it on budget and stuff, then you're going to just read like a project manager. You're not going to read like a product manager. And I see resumes like that all the time. So that helps. Network helps a huge amount. And the other thing that I think is valuable is once you get a foot in the door, you can also move like adjacent. Like, a lot of people that I know got their first product role by moving across inside of an organization, right? Like being able to get in another role and move across. Again, like I said, like I'd experience as a product owner, as a BA, and the BA moved into product owner was internally as well. And there's overlap between those roles. And that becomes a much easier sell because they know you. You can talk to all the people, you can build rapport, you can, build credibility, and then it's easier to transfer internally than to actually try and break into a role. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think transitioning from an engineer to a product manager might be a bit harder than transitioning from a BI or agile coach to a product manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's roles that have overlap. Product marketing, design, BA, even product owner and stuff. I have a lot of overlap. There's other ones, but just off the top of my head. But engineer, like, you take that as an example. Like, I know engineers that have become product managers, and a lot of it has been internal. And generally, it's been an internal opportunity on either the product that they're already working on, or it's a very technical product. Like, we have this platform over here, or we have this API product. And we're actually thinking that maybe we need a product manager that's more technical. And if you make it known that's where you want to take your career, and you do learning and you develop yourself in that space, and everyone knows about it, and you share stuff like, hey, I went to, product conference. You can pick whatever one's in your region. And here, I'm going to play back the things that I learned from that product conference. And then now they start to associate product conference, product management with you, even though you're an engineer. And that builds that, brand around you, around that thing that you want. And then again, you make it known. And then when the opportunity comes, they start thinking, well, do we want to go to market? Or, we actually love to keep these people, our own people, because you want to as a company. And this person or whoever you are is really good, a really good value add to the company. Would like to keep them. If that's where they want to take your career, let's give them an opportunity. And let's give them the support and structure and mentoring and coaching to make you succeed. And that's, great way to transition.
Yeah, I think for many senior people who are already like 6-8 years deep into their current career, one of the concerns in terms of transitioning might be about losing their current position. So, for example, I'm already a senior product marketeer. If I start talking about product management, would I lose my respect and potential promotion as a product marketeer? So, what would you recommend to people who are dealing with those kind of fears about, losing what they already achieved, but at the same time dreaming about moving on?
I have a personal principle, which is, the past is the past. You got to look forward to the future, right? If you obsess over the past, you're never going to move from where you are today. So whilst, yes, all of those things are valid, me personally, I would just discard it all, because, like, for example, if you're a product marketer today, you're a senior, maybe you're a head of product marketing. But if that's not where you want to take your career, if that's not where you see yourself in 5, 6, 7, 10 years time, then who cares, right? If you keep trying to keep one foot in the door and trying to be a great, move your career as a product marketer, guess what? That's always going to be easier than pivoting your career. So what's going to happen is you'll just keep moving up, and then you'll be miserable because that's not what you want to take your career. So you've built your career to where it is today, which is fine. And you've done an amazing job. That's awesome. Like, you should be super proud of that. And people will recognize that. Like, hey, you've built a great career. You're a product marketing leader. Like, that's amazing. And when you then transition, there's overlap there. And then what I also find is the people who are more senior and progressed in their careers, when they do transition, they tend to progress quicker as well. That happened to me. I moved like pretty quickly through like then running a team and being a lead anyways. Like I moved in. So when I took my next role after from the agile coaching, going back in the product, I kind of went in as a product manager, but then I was quickly seen as a leader, like one of the more senior people in the team. And that's because I had like years of experience and stuff. So you'll tend to excel quicker. So you'll go back a little bit, but you'll make it back up pretty quickly is what I tend to see in my own experience. And that's how I've felt my career has been that way. But yeah, I think if you're too focused on it, you just need to focus on where you want to go next and is this helping me go to the next step in my career is really the question.
Yeah, totally. I feel that the stories that you shared is very inspirational. So hopefully people could take some example from that. So I think in terms of overall transitions and career switches, you start thinking deeper about your strengths and weaknesses. Like, for example, with product management, you said that you identified this gap with the design thinking, for example. So do you have any frameworks or any approaches how you analyze your skill set? Like what actually in this example with design thinking helped you identify that you need to fill this gap?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that I've used over the years, and it's probably just like a combination of all of them. I've used 360 feedback multiple times in the past. So ask my peers what they think of me and that type of stuff. And if you want to rate it based on skills, not as though I've done it to this extent, but if I was to do it for like a new different type of role that I want to do, you could Google, like it's so easy to find competency frameworks out there or skills matrix out there. There's especially for product management, there's a lot of them, right? Just find one of them and then get them to rate you on those skills, and you can get an input from all around. Self-rating is a huge part of it too. I mean, that's probably where I always start, is just self-rating myself. So if I can do some research about the role, find a skills matrix, and then I can just sit down and look at it and say, what's familiar to me and what's not familiar? What do I feel like I've got experience in? And when I think about experience, I don't just think about knowledge. I think about, have I actually done it? There's a difference between I know this concept and then I've done it. So like at that point in time, I had been exposed to like customer interviews, but have I ran a customer interview? No, I hadn't. So I still had a lot of learning to do there. That's for sure. So that's some of the things that I do. A part of it also informally is, as I'm doing my research and learning about the role and even doing a course, anything that surprises me, like, oh, I didn't know that, or, oh, this is a topic I don't feel like I know a lot. Those things I flag, like write a note, put it down. Okay, I'm going to look this up further. And I do that even to today. When I hear something that I don't feel like I fully know, I always write a note about it and I always then look it up later. And yeah, just being able to then look it up and then try and learn more about it, you'll then uncover, like, sometimes you learn more about it. It's like, oh, I actually know what this is. It's just a different label for something else that I know. That happens all the time. But a lot of the times you'll then realize, oh, I know nothing about this. And oh my God, I just scratched the surface to this big world of this whole new topic that I didn't even know anything about. And then great, put that on the backlog to kind of learn and spend that time. That's probably something too, learning backlog. I think that's a very powerful tool. I use that even when I start a new client or a new job. I always create a bit of a learning backlog.
How does it look like?
It's literally backlog. I actually have a template for your first 90 days. And essentially it has columns that's like, what do you need to know? Why do you need to know it? And then how are you going to get it and who are you going to get it from? So, and you can do the same for learning about a role. Now, the who could be like Google. It doesn't need to be a physical person all the time. It could be, insert a product school somewhere like that you can learn and get a course
ChatGPT.
from. Yeah, your ChatGPT, although I don't know, it's not bad, but I still am on the side of, might teach you some bad habits. But yeah, just following that. Like the why is a huge part of it because that helps you prioritize, which is like, why do I really need to know this? What am I thinking here? I think it's integral to this role that I want to go into, and I don't think I have experience into it. Okay, great. And then who's sometimes a person, like go find a mentor, go spend some time. Sometimes the answer to is like, I'm going to shadow. Like I said, I started spending a lot of time with designers. It's like, they might have got annoyed with me maybe, but a lot of them I actually call my really good friends these days. So I hope they think the same as well.
It worked.
Yeah.
Nice. So you touched on the prioritization aspect, and that's what I'm really curious about because I think at the end of the day, when you have a list of 10 skills you need to work on, you might feel overwhelmed. So how do you prioritize? Is it purely based on the why, like why it is important for me to know about that, or are there any other inputs into your prioritization?
You could think of it like an assumptions map where like there's a unknown, although that's been updated to evidence, unknown versus known, and like important versus not important matrix. That's really how I'm prioritizing it, is how important do I think this is to the role? And then how much do I know about it versus like how known is it to me versus unknown? Is it because there's going to be things that are a complete black box I've never heard about before. And I'm going to then prioritize. And I think that they're very important to the role. Then I'm going to prioritize those first. The things that are less important or more known will end up lower in the kind of priority list. But that is how I think about it. So think about it in terms of importance to the role, and then basically how much do I know about it? Because there's going to be things that you know a lot that are important to the role, but just ignore them. You know them, right? And then there's things that you don't know at all, but arguably, at least based on your knowledge today, because you don't know everything, but based on your knowledge today, it's not as important in the role. That's okay. Put it lower in the backlog. If you get time, get to it. Yeah. Yeah. That's why just like, yeah, design thinking became so high to me because I was like, this is integral to the role. Like, if I don't understand product discovery and how that works, then like, what am I? I'm just still on the delivery side of the fence, right? I'm just another delivery manager or something like that. So I need to push myself that way. So that's why that was so important. And also, it was somewhat known to me, but I knew I was just scratching the surface. I needed to really get deep into it.
And I think in terms of acquiring a new skill, there is always this argument in terms of taking a course or like reading a book, like doing something theoretical versus practice, like doing a side project or trying to find a project at work that could help you gain the skill. What's your approach? Like, how do both? Do you do just one of them first and then another one? Yeah, share more about that.
Yeah, I absolutely do both. But there's also like, I almost want to like debunk some myths in this one because people are like, training courses are useless because you don't learn anything. You can only learn by practicing. Yeah, vice versa. The truth is, and there's actually literature you can learn about learning. And that's a topic I get interested in. And like I said before, I get really deep into it when I get interested in a topic. But um, you can do something and it can be incorrect, and you can do it over and over and over again, incorrect. And is that learning? No. Well, it's learning to do the wrong thing, right? So both are equally important. In fact, I would argue that the most important thing to do underneath everything is actually reflection. So when you do something, you need to then pause, reflect. So there's all these learning cycles, you can look into them. But there's essentially the common factor in pretty much any learning cycle is reflection. And it's a key part of it because if I do something, I then need to reflect on how did that feel? And I need to give feedback too, right? So I don't know. So I just did something. Is it good? Somebody else give me feedback, and I need to find that source to give me feedback. Equally, you can learn something theoretically, and then you can reflect. You can reflect on your own experience. Have I experienced something similar before? If I have, based on this new knowledge, what would I have changed? If I had to do that again, what would I have changed? And visualization is actually a form of a way to learn. And there's actually a lot of science about if you see something as well, especially with kids, it starts to degrade when you're in adulthood. But if you see something or you visualize something, so mentally, it actually fires the same neurons as actually doing it. So like if you say that the only way to actually like reinforce those neuro pathways is through actually doing it, then that you're wrong. And every single elite athlete uses the power of visualization to actually do that. So like racing car drivers will actually close their eyes, visualize the track, visualize how to do it. And that's how they get more reps in than always being on the simulator. So super powerful technique. Don't discard it because you can actually think about that scenario, how would I have done it differently? It's always more powerful if you can base it on your own experience because you actually can make it vivid and think about what you would do differently. And that is actually almost as good as actually doing it for real, believe it or not. I know that's probably crazy to some people, but it actually is. So both is really powerful, and reflection is the most important. So that is something that I make a habit of doing all the time. So if I read something or if I have an interesting conversation with someone or I'm on a training course, I'm always pausing, reflecting. how does this change how I think, and what have I done in the past? Would I change something? And if I ran into this situation again in the future, what would I do differently? Start thinking about that, reflect on that. Equally, when you do something in practice, do the same, and also seek people's feedback on that as well, because they'll give you feedback, and then you can reflect, okay, based on your feedback, what would I do differently? And then you could go and do it again and do it differently, and then that's obviously going to strengthen the learning even further. But yeah, both. Absolutely both. And to be honest, like, doing is actually really hard and quite a slow learning process. So when you actually, if you can top it up with all the theory and doing courses and talking to people and watching videos and stuff, you actually accelerate way faster than somebody who only did the practice. Yeah.
Makes sense. As you've been talking about reflection, I cannot skip this question about your reflection on your past transitions, because you've done a lot of career transitions. What was your main learning after doing all those transitions? Like, are there any things you wish you've done differently, or are there any things that you praise yourself for doing in course of those transitions?
I think the one that I reflected on, and then I've since given as advice to other people, and I said it earlier, and I've also, I've done it multiple times, and it's always served me well, is that part about making it known. If it's not known, nobody's going to think about you for that role. That lead through the network wouldn't have come to me if they didn't know that that's where I wanted to take my career, and I was actually doing something about it. Because I think the two go together. Because you can just say you want to do it, but then if you back it up with, hey, these are all the things that I'm doing in order to help me learn and be the best product manager. I know I'm not a product manager today, but here's all the things I'm doing. That's obviously going to help build that credibility. And then when they think about you, they're not thinking about you as someone who is like, hey, they want to do it, but I actually have no idea whether they actually know what they're getting into or they have any skills in this space. But if you are doing those things, the two go together. So I think those two things is probably the number one thing I've reflected on, is probably the best thing to do. Maybe earlier in my career, I could have done that a little bit better, make it more known and build more things. The other thing that I mentioned before too was that relationship stuff in the network. Like I said, I kind of informally did it early on. I make a much more deliberate effort on it, although I know some people that take networking and relationship building to a whole nother level to me. Like, I'm nowhere near where they're at. Yeah, they're on a different planet. But yeah, just taking it more seriously and realizing that it's a huge like leverage point. It's such a high leverage thing. Even today, as a coach, like, a lot of my clients come via the network. Like, people have worked with me in the past. Sometimes it's not even like people I've coached. It's just people I've worked with in the past. And they're like, oh, Ant's really, really good. And hey, we're struggling with this problem. And I know he knows something about how we could help solve this problem. So yeah, it comes that way. So I think that's the other one that I definitely think I could have done better earlier in my career. And I make more of a deliberate effort now. And I got a lot more to grow in that space now too, even still, but yeah.
And I think in the last part of the interview, I just wanted to ask you about your most recent chapter on coaching and your own business. So how did that happen? So how did you manage to build your personal brand, and what actually gave you confidence to do this full time?
Yeah. So I feel fortunate. I mean, I think a lot of your career, and especially when it's so zigzaggy like mine, a lot of it's just about exposure. You get exposed to something, and then you kind of move on. I had exposure to coaching, agile coaching. I went back into product, but I actually ended up at a agency. So we were working with clients, and that was an amazing experience because I got to get exposed to the whole product lifecycle, like 0 to 1, sunsetting products, working with all different types of industries, from like airlines to like, yeah, all kinds of media companies, all kinds of industries. And what I found in my role there was I was actually starting to mix the two together. So whilst dependent on the engagement, but sometimes they would have their own product managers or even just leadership. Like, not all the time did they understand why we might be doing so much discovery or something like that. So I had to spend time educating them and helping them understand that, hey, this is why we're doing it, because a lot of your role stakeholder management, right? What I found was, depending on the engagement, I was actually doing like a mixture of both coaching and product management. And and coaching on product management. And I realized that I enjoyed it. And I thought that it kind of mixed the two loves together, like two things that I love doing, which is why I pursued coaching in the first place, because I like helping other people. Like it's, yeah, even today, and I sometimes take a long time to get back to messages because I have a lot of messages. But if somebody messages me with a genuine question and help, I always try and get back to them because I want to help. Like that's just, I'll see how long I can maintain that. But um, because genuinely that's what I want to do, and that's why I liked coaching, because watching people grow and succeed in their careers and have those aha moments gave me a huge amount of purpose and fulfillment. But I didn't like doing it when I was too far away from the stuff that I also enjoy, which is like business and product. So mixing the two together was awesome. And I realized it was the first time that I got a bit of a, I guess, taste for the fact that that could even be a thing, right? That maybe there's an opportunity here. So that's how that started. And then I started thinking about that as a role and as a thing. I did what I typically did. I started talking to people about that. I knew some people who were doing their own thing. A person who was a product coach in the UK as well. And yeah, I just started to ascertain whether I thought it was a viable thing and whether I could actually go out and do it. And then at the same time, in parallel, probably a happy accident, but in parallel, over the years, I had a lot of people tell me that I should really write and speak, because they're always like, you got so much to share and, inspirational, and, it's just good knowledge and you should share it. And I took a lot of convincing to do it, because for me, when I'm talking with someone like one-on-one, I see the impact. I see them go and change the way that they're doing something, or they come back to me months later and say, hey, I did that thing that we talked about and it's amazing. Like, I can't believe it changed this and all that type of stuff. So I saw that impact. And for me, I don't know, I think I wasn't convinced that just writing about something or doing a talk, because I think I felt like I was going to be removed from that impact. And I wasn't sure how I was going to measure that or even see it, or whether I would get fulfillment out of it. I was probably over a 2-3 year period. I had different people in different companies tell me that I should write or speak. And eventually I decided, bugger it, let's just give it a try. Somebody convinced me. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they said to me basically, like, we had the conversation about, like, why do I like coaching and why do I like this type of stuff? And they said to me, well, if you like helping people, what about if you wrote something and somebody read it and it helped them? Like, if it just helped one person. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. Like, that's a really good reason to do it. So I decided to do it. I started blogging. Blogging turned into opportunities to talk. I actually submitted some talks to some conferences too. Didn't get all of them, got a few of them. Reached out to people that I knew at meetups, because at that stage I was starting to be deliberate about my network. So I knew a lot of people at meetups who organized meetups. I got opportunities to speak, and that kind of like snowballed. And what ended up happening was I ended up getting a lead from all of that. Somebody ended up reaching out to me for essentially like what I wanted to do. So my leap was not too much of a leap of faith, because I had something lined up. Although once I finished that contract, I had nothing lined up. But I thought, why not? Let's take it and let's see where it goes.
Nice. I really like how you gradually build up to, doing what you really want, with different Lego blocks almost, like through your networks, through different opportunities, through just, building a path, like a bridge to the other side of the river. That's really amazing. And I think a lot of our listeners could get a lot from that.
Yeah, and it's crazy when I reflect on my whole career, because some of those building blocks were even earlier than that. Like, I think about my time in the produce department, coaching and spending time, because I had to train some of the new people, and I was like 17 years old training new people, but they trusted me with it, which was crazy. But I loved them for that, and they set me very well for my career. But like doing that, I enjoyed. And then even early in university, I did a business and IT degree. They didn't tell me anything about product management during that degree, by the way. So they told me to get into project management, which is crazy. But I did marketing, and I actually didn't think I'll enjoy marketing, but I did it, and I got really into like behavioral economics and consumer behavior. and I ended up like majoring in marketing in my degree because I loved the psychology side so much, and like consumer behavior, trying to understand customers and how do we understand customers' needs and that type of stuff and create value propositions. So even that was like a seed all the way back then when I was 20 years old. And there's all these little seeds along the path, and I think it's just like drip by drip you get exposed to it. So I got exposed to that, which I really enjoyed. Then I got exposed to, like working in a product team. I got exposed to that. It goes, over the years. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, step by step. And you never know which experience would help you, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like all of it has helped. I think all of it is attributed. There's not like a single piece. I think like if I didn't do that marketing subject, I could have ended up in a complete different path as a result of it. Or maybe I would have still ended up here, but maybe it would have been a longer route, or I don't know. Yeah.
Really inspiring. So, what would be your kind of the last words of advice to people who are going through career transitions right now?
Yeah, I think learn as much as possible about it. Almost do it obsessively. Maybe not an unhealthy obsession like I can be sometimes. Um, I would also say, yeah, make it known that that's where you want to go. I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I have since coached people who and gotten them into their first product role. And as an example, one of them, he was tossing up. It was a product marketing role, and it was like, do I take it? Do I not? And I kind of asked him like, is it a step in the like? Is it a step towards your ultimate goal, or is it a step away? And he concluded it was a step towards, because he wasn't doing anything like that at the moment. And product marketing is a step closer to product management. I was like, great. So he took the role, and I told him the same thing, like make it known. And he did. And 9 months later, an opportunity came up and they moved him into a product manager role. So like, again, don't make it known and you don't spend time building that credibility like that's something you can do. That opportunity would just never come your way. So probably think about it in terms of, you might not always get that next step straight away. You might have to take an interim step, but I always frame it as, am I moving towards my goal or am I moving away from my goal? And if you're moving towards it, then it's a step towards it. Like, let's go. Like, why not? Like you're more closer to your goal than you are today. Why would you say no to that? And then make it known, and you can always move laterally as well is probably the other big one. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You shared so many insights with our listeners. Thank you for being with us, and wishing you the best of luck in your next steps. I think that might be not the last pivot that you make. So wishing you all the best in all those changes.
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, we'll see. I think all of this has come because I just want to help people, and coaching and doing other things, and content is a great way to scale it. That's why I'm more than happy to have this conversation to help others. So maybe it might stay because I might have found that stake in the ground, but yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.